Hey guys, so far we have our pumpkins, and the only thing that I do want to do, because you can see some of my other stuff that's behind it, kind of peeking through. You guys might not be able to see it, but I can see it. So I'm just going to take a piece of paper and put it in between so that I'm not seeing the shadows of my other drawings behind it. So I'm just gonna, this is a little trick that I've learned to do. Okay, so now all I can see is my pumpkins. Alright, I'm going to start adding shading for this. The one main thing that you need to think about is where's your light source. So whether that be the sun, the moon, a light because it's inside, it doesn't matter. For me, I'm going to say that my light is coming from this side here. You don't have to draw your little circle. I'm drawing that just so you guys know where my light source is. Okay? So that means that this side is going to be lighter than this side of my pumpkin. Okay? I'm going to start sketching in some of my shading. You can use, it doesn't matter which kind of pencil you use. Regular wood pencils tend to be a little bit easier to shade with, in my opinion. If you remember your value scale, you're going to be adding different values to your pumpkins to try to make them look realistic, to make it kind of look three-dimensional. Alright. Now, because this is rounded, I'm always going to try to kind of make a rounded shading towards the top. This is a little bit darker because it's where the two pumpkins meet. So that's going to be in shadow as well. For the most part, though, your pumpkin's going to be lighter in the middle of each one of these sections, okay? And that's because it's going to stick out further towards the middle of it than it does towards the edge. The edge is going to be farther away from you. It's going to be more in shadow. The other thing that you can use to help you with shading for the blending part, if you don't feel like using your finger, you can use a Q-tip. I usually just, blend with my finger, but I brought out some Q-tips to show you how you can do it. Okay, I want shading right here from the stem. Where the stem kind of connects, it sticks up a little higher, so there's going to be a little bit of a shadow right there. Okay. And it's all about smooth transitions, guys. Alright, so I've got a Q-tip, just a regular old Q-tip. The only thing I don't like about using a Q-tip is that it tends to take some of your pencil away, like with it. See how like much of it like almost absorbs? So you'll lose some of that really dark, crisp look about it, and it can get a little fuzzy. So you just have to be careful of that and make sure you go back in after you've blended it and added some of that crisp line back. Okay? Alright, I'm going to go on to the next little section. Right here where the other pumpkin meets it, you want to make sure that that's nice and dark. And especially right in here, it's going to be really dark because that's where our shadow is going to be. Now notice how you don't see an outline. Now right here you see an outline. This is not going to stay. This is all going to get to where I'm going to smooth it so that it's going to be it'll blend smoothly into it, because I don't want to have an outline. In real life you won't have outlines, you know. So however dark you make your line, be prepared that your shading has to get up that darkness right against that. So it's not going to stay this darkness the whole way around. Obviously it's going to get lighter as we get on this side. But these first two are going to be nice and dark. Okay. Notice that little fuzzy edge there I got going on? If I wasn't going to be shading in this right here, then I would have to go back in there and, you know, clean up that edge. But since we're shading this one, it doesn't matter so much. I'm even going to go in as far as to pull out some lights. Okay. Alright, so on to the next. Same process, it's just going to get a little bit lighter. So when I shade this, I don't want to start off too dark. Notice the whole thing's not the same shade, right? It's not the same value. You're going to have, towards the creases, it's a little bit darker, and then it gets lighter as it gets out towards the middle. You need to remember that as you're shading it. Because you don't want it to get too dark. You don't want it having where the whole pumpkin looks the same, shade of gray, or it's going to make it really flat. So we don't want that at all. The bottom's going to be a little bit darker, and towards the creases they're a little bit darker. And see how I'm keeping that kind of curved look about it too. Right now it looks a little streaky, and that's okay because I am going to go back in and smudge it. Okay, so Q-tip. Start smudging it together, make it a little bit more smooth. And I'm kind of smudging it in circles because I'm trying to get rid of those streaks, those lines, and add a little bit more shading and erase some out. I could actually probably smudge with a new Q-tip and it'll even pull some more of this gray out. Because right now it's kind of looking pretty much the same. So we don't want that. If you have, there's a type of eraser that's really good for this too. It's called an elephant ear eraser. I'm sorry, wow. No, kneaded eraser, sorry. I'm thinking ceramics at the same time as, but yeah, a kneaded eraser. And it's pretty cool. You're able to kind of just touch it to it and it'll pull some of the value off, like some of the pencil off, and then you can just kind of smudge and it won't leave these lines or anything like that. It's a lot smoother. I always tend to go back to using my finger on it. I'm just used to it. Alright, so on to the next. Remember, as it's getting over, these are going to be the lightest sides. Right here, here, and here. They're going to be the lightest ones. This side's going to be so light, in fact, that I'm probably going to erase out this line so that it'll really show how light that side is. I don't want it to look like it has an outline. I just realized this stayed really kind of harsh right here. Alright. Alright. Okay, as you can see, the texture is totally different between this and this because I haven't smudged it yet, so that's something that you want to think about when you're adding your shading. And like I've showed you guys, you can just as easily use your finger to smudge. As a matter of fact, I'm so much more used to using my finger to smudge for my drawings because you don't have to go and get, you know, you have to go and get the Q-tip, whereas, you know, you don't have to worry about that with this. Alright, I'm not liking this shape going on here. For some reason it's pulled a weird shape about it. So I'm just using my eraser to pull some of the darkness out right here, because it almost looked like a splotch, and I don't want that. I am going to still go in and kind of define these lines here. And remember, like with pumpkins, maybe you won't even see the whole line, you know. I don't want it to look like an outline, remember. So it should look like a crease. And it's okay if the line's not perfectly straight because it's a pumpkin. It's not going to be. Okay? Alright. So these lines, I am going to, well, I'm going to add shading on this side, so it'll be alright. It'll probably get up to that darkness. I don't really like what's going on there. Notice how I'm like trying to keep this light. Every once in a while you might notice that your pencil is not, it's like almost like it has a snag on it that's like not shading smoothly. You just have to like get a piece of scratch paper and kind of shade on the side of it until it smooths out. That's kind of what happened up here, why it's so dark, because it kept getting caught. So notice how this is staying like really light. I don't like this right here though. It still looks like a line to me. Same thing right here. I'm not really digging that. It's not a smooth transition. It's going right from like a medium to a light, and that's not cool. A little bit better. Still not my favorite, but alright. So now this last one here. Okay, this is a bit dark right here, so I'm going to lighten that up. You might not be able to see the line, I can still see where it is. So, this is still shading too dark right there. Every once in a while, your pencil might get like a weird spot on it, and it gives you a hard time when you're trying to shade lightly. It's all about pencil control though, guys. Like, if you barely touch the paper, you're going to get a really nice light value. If you're pressing down darker, it's going to be darker. So you really need to control how dark you're pressing. Now this outline right here has got to go, because that's going to be way too dark for this side of the pumpkin. Okay, so what I'm going to do is get out a nice clean Q-tip. Because I want to... I know it's stealing some of the value from that crease, but I'm just trying to get a nice tone on the whole thing, and then I can always go back in and add some more darks in the crease of the pumpkin there. Alright, this one obviously I didn't do. Alright, it's getting a good shape to it. Alright, so now I'm going to go to the stem. The stem, basically, I talked about this on checkpoint 1. This is kind of like my guideline. It's going to be dark on either side of it. So we think about that it's going to have maybe like a little bit of a lip where it's not quite as dark, but this dents in here. And the stem is not as smooth of a texture as the pumpkin is. The only part that's a little bit smooth would be this part right here. So right now I'm just kind of like sketching in where my real dark areas are going to be for the stem. I am going to go back in and add some more texturing and shading on the light parts. Alright. So. Lighten this up just a little since it is on the light side. Okay, you guys can see how it's getting kind of adding a little bit of shading to that too. Pumpkin number 1 is done. You're basically going to do the same thing for pumpkin number 2. Let me see where I'm at, about 30 minutes in. This pumpkin, you imagine, is going to make this area right here dark. This pumpkin overall is going to be a little bit darker just because the light source is over here. This pumpkin's kind of blocking a little bit. You're going to get a lot of light hitting your stem here, and more light up here than down here, but it's still going to be probably darker than your other pumpkin. Again, I want to start on the dark side because it's just easier to start with where your darks are going to be. So now, obviously, down here is going to be a little bit darker. There's going to be some light hitting up here. So I'm going to make sure that I'm nice and dark down here. And as you guys can see, I kind of go back and forth over the same spot. Like, okay, it's really dark right here, so now I start going a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter. I'm still trying to keep that kind of rounded look about it. I'm getting it lighter up here because, like I told you, the sun is going to reflect over on the top part a little bit. But again, it's going to go down right here a little bit where the stem is. Okay. Okay, and we're going to use Q-tip. Get some nice smudging going on. Okay. I'm noticing right on my edge here that I've got these little stray marks that are left over from when I was sketching in my design. So I'm just going to clean that up a bit. Gotta be really careful when you're getting rid of the eraser because it could wind up smudging your whole paper. Like I've got some smudging going on over here. It's not too bad, but... Alright, so Same thing, this one's going to be darker because it's kind of the opposite side of the sun. I'm noticing a little spot that doesn't want to accept color from pretty much getting dented in from drawing right on top of the whole sketchbook. Sometimes you'll notice that it will show like a white line, like it's not shading in everything, and that's because whatever I drew on the page before this, some of that indent, you know, from how hard I was pressing with my pencil, has transferred itself onto this page. So because of that, I'm getting some undesirable white lines. Right. Alright, it's working. I'm going to try to pull some of this up. Alright. You gotta be careful because sometimes, like, you don't want this to say, like, pepper. You know, you don't want it to look like a pepper. You want it to make sure that it continues to look like a pumpkin and not a pepper. It did it again. See how that's really dark there? And then it's got some white. It's like it just did not want to shade right there. I think it's my pencil here is acting up. Alright, well, we're going to switch. This might be a mistake to switch mid-drawing, but I'll show you guys how to shade with, oh, well, let's pick one that doesn't isn't messing up on you. Alright. It's kind of hard to switch mid-drawing, but with this, because of how sharp mechanical pencils are all the time, it's more about layering to get your darkness. You don't want to really draw too dark with a mechanical pencil because you could wind up ripping your paper. They're very sharp, especially compared to a regular pencil. They don't really get dull. They just either break or, you know, kind of get sharper, really. So it's all about adding layers to get the darkness you want with this. Trying to keep it darker down the bottom because you imagine it's a spherical object, so obviously there's going to be a shadow towards the bottom of the pumpkin. And trying to keep it darker towards the middle lines, but keeping it lighter towards the middle. I'm not as concerned with getting these, like, you know, over layers because I am going to smear, and it will still smear even though it's a mechanical pencil. It'll still work to smear. Oops. Little loop I made. Okay. Alright, so I'm getting a lot of streaking through here, but as you'll see, you take your handy dandy Q-tip, and I'm kind of smudging in the same direction that I was shading. And that's going to help fill in those little spots that didn't get the same values. It smooths it out. And you'll want to go back in and you're going to add highlights by erasing out, and you'll add your, you know, your darker areas in too. Alright. But it is coming along. Speaking of highlights, one of the things that you can do that usually kind of looks cool is and it looks like the light's kind of hitting that. You might even have some come down from it. So, but anyway, we're going to do the same thing with this too. 40 minutes, guys. So I'm going to stop right here. The only other thing, actually, let me do this real quick so I can show you. Your pumpkins will need a shadow. So if you think this is my light source, so my shadow is going to go diagonally away from that. So this will be like this. Okay, see how it's a curved line, because those are curved objects. Okay, your shadow is going to be really, really dark right up against your objects. Like pretty much as dark as you can get your pencil to go. I don't want to lose the bottom of my pumpkin here. It's going to be really dark. And as it gets farther away, it's going to lighten up. So it's still really dark. But remember, you don't want an outline. So however dark you made your line, oops, now I know what that's happening. I'm getting a line from that paper I put underneath. And I'm going to do that for the entire thing, okay? That entire thing is going to be nice and dark, and it's only going to get slightly light as it gets out towards here, okay? But it's going to stay nice and dark because we want to have that illusion that it's a shadow. The other thing that you can do is you can either add some kind of texture to your table or just a little bit of a value where it's a little bit darker as it's farther away. You know, just something so that it's not just a line. We don't like lines, right? So I might even erase so that this isn't quite so dark. This pencil is just not cooperating. It's like making these really dark lines that I'm not liking at all. If you notice that you're getting a lot of smudges around the outside of your artwork as well, you need to go back in and clean those up. You do not want to leave it all smudgy, because if you leave it all smudgy, it's just not going to look as nice. It's not going to look intentional. I don't like how streaky my pencil made that. Just not my favorite. But see how that kind of brings it from this like medium dark so it sets the pumpkins on the table. So the shading, you're going to continue that the whole way off. I will attach this picture to your assignment so that you'll be able to see the finished product. Remember, guys, go back in and add some highlights too.